Hello, I'm Leela Viss at 88pianokeys.me, and today I have a good friend named Pam Simpson. She is a piano teacher, and we've been living parallel lives for quite some time. We just won't tell because we don't want to give away our young age, but she lives just down the road, and we've recently connected again, or reconnected, because we share the same gym. We go to a number of the same classes, and we both like to work out. And Pam is also heading up a Federation Festival, and she's quite brilliant, and I'm just trying to support her in small ways as much as possible. But Pam, I want to know a little bit about you. First of all, I'll just tell you all that Pam is going to talk about teaching students with ADHD. So the very first question is, why are you so passionate about teaching students with that condition? Is that what we call it? Disorder? Okay. And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So again, my name is Pam Simpson. I'm a private piano teacher. I've been teaching for a number of years. My first encounter with a student with ADHD was when I was a college student. I was teaching at the piano preparatory program, and the professor noticed that I had an interest in challenges, and this child was a challenge. But then I've had students over the years, many of students with ADHD, but the most significant one is my son. And he is now 18 and a college student. And I've learned a great deal from being the parent of a child with ADHD. A lot of it has been a lot of trial and error. And so I think I'm really excited for this opportunity, because since so much has been error, to be able to share what I've been able to accumulate over the years, so that for other teachers that can make fewer errors and go straight to the things that really do work.
Well, and I think that's what's so attractive about hearing what you have to say, is because you're coming from it at both angles, from a teacher, but also as a parent. And I think us teachers need to hear that side as well, because we don't know what to do when the student sits down, and it may be unexpected for us. And yet you already have some of that experience under your belt, and you can give us a lot of guidance and advice, much more than someone who's just a teacher who's taught ADHD kids, or just a parent who hasn't. But you a great combination of both. So feel free to share as much as you can with us, please.
Right. Yes. And my son Connor did help me with a lot of this. He did clear everything to make sure it was correct.
Good.
But just a little bit about ADHD. I know that this handout that I have will be available to you at the very end. I've got my two favorite resources that I highly recommend. One is a book called Healing ADD, and the other one is a podcast that you can find on YouTube. It's actually very long, this podcast, which is why I gave the two that I find that are the most helpful.
Okay.
But if you want to learn about the specifics of the disorder, those are both very, very well done.
Okay.
But I just want to get to the heart of the teaching matter. Kids with ADHD, there's three basic things that they're really going to struggle with in their piano lessons. One is organization. The second one is motivation. And the third is being able to break tasks into small, manageable chunks. And by that, I would say one thing at a time. That's just by definition of the disorder. It all comes from the frontal cortex. These kids are bright, it's not an intelligence issue. It's just more of a management issue.
And I think that's what's frustrating as teachers, is because sometimes we see that light in there, but we just don't know how to get it, capture it, and help them through some of the traps that they may fall into.
Right. And I find that if you can those three things, if you can target and help and assist the student in those three areas, they can be extremely successful.
Okay. So take us through organization first. Is that what we're starting?
Yes.
Okay.
Organization. This is really key. You want to have a nice, organized, and which is, you find they really will struggle with organization. I like to have a practice binder for all of my students, but for the kids with ADHD in particular. When you put a new assignment sheet, put it in the front. This is really funny with them. If they don't see it, they forget it exists. If it's not right there physically in their sight or in their hands, it doesn't exist. And so having it right there in the front is important. Any loose papers that you give them, if you give them a Xerox or anything, needs to be attached in that binder or it will be lost. I really like, and they may forget to check the assignment sheet. So another really great way is these little flags to put it. I put flags in every piece that they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So when they just pull out their books, they know exactly which page to go to. And then a predictable pattern for every lesson. I start with reading as a general rule. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but just kind of have a little basic structure of saying basic things that you do. So they're knowing what to expect, and also really try and keep your lesson time consistent. So when you're scheduling these kids, really try and pick a time that you can be consistent with every week. Anytime that there's any kind of change, my son Connor, school testing would happen and they would change the schedule for the day or two, he was completely thrown off and everything went out the window for him. Those were just awful, awful days for him. So if you can keep that structure in place for these kids, it's very, very helpful. Okay. And then one other thing, this especially if you've got beginners, when you're just trying to get that structure in place for them, this is a card that I used with one of my current students who has very severe ADHD. We have a little checklist for him, and actually he and his brother both have ADHD. I do them kind of as a partner. Well, they take turns. They have a private lesson for half, and then what you always call off-bench activities for the second half. And so he's got the two different sides. I put it on a colored card, and I prefer a card as opposed to assignment sheet because this is something he can carry with him. It's colored, so when he sets it down, he can see it right away. He knows where it is. Okay, I find that helpful. But there's just a little checklist. This is the stuff that he needs to complete for his lesson. And these are the things that he completes for his off-bench activities. If he's able to complete everything on the list, there is a prize. And that'll take us right into motivation. Kids with ADHD do not have internal motivation. It's just that front part of the brain does not work. And so if you're expecting a kid to do something just because it's the right thing to do, or there's going to be a long-term reward, they're not going to do it. They need very much external rewards and nice tangible things that are right there. There's no time space in between. It's immediately at the end of the lesson. That prize is right there for them.
So it can be at the end of the lesson, but they have to see it. It cannot be something.
Well, they know it's there in the drawer.
Okay.
They know exactly where it is.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's not the only prize that's offered. There's other incentives all throughout the lesson.
Okay.
But that's the main one.
Right. One more thing. What's interesting is all the things that you're talking about, like I kind of do already, just because we all need that structure in some ways as well. But I really like this checklist idea. And do you kind of hold that over them? Like we need to get through all of this if
it's right there on the music stand next to the music with a pencil. And I can give him, he can choose to some extent. I say, these are the couple things we have to do first.
Oh, okay.
Like the reading cards, and I'll show you the reading cards here in a minute. Just because I know they take more of his focus. The harder things we want to put at the beginning.
At the beginning. Okay.
When his focus is at its best.
But they also like that idea of being in control of themselves, right? So you're trying to give as much as you can.
Right. Okay. So then when he's done, he checks it off. And this is great too, because on those days where, they're having a tough time focusing, and there are those days. I listed in the handout some of the triggers that are you can really look out for. There's many, but there's a few key ones. But this when you say, they'll go off on a tangent. Let me give you an example. So for the reading cards, I absolutely adore, these are the Piano Adventures flashcards in a box. These were great because you see, to the one step at a time.
Oh, yeah.
There's one
Okay.
thing at a time. The first thing, they just need to identify the first note and play it on the piano. The second one is an easy example. And the third one is the super student. So that's with motivation as well.
Okay.
They're a super student if they can figure this one out. But very often when Jack will play one of these, it will remind him of a song. And he'll start playing the song, which is great. And I need to allow that.
Mhm.
But then he checks it off on the list when he's completed with it. And we remind him, hey, we need to get through the rest of this in order for you to get your prize today. Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
And then that
Yeah.
helps transition
I can
because
see
there's
that
there's
list.
going to be little curves all throughout the lesson.
Mhm.
And it's important to be flexible along with that, but this will bring you back.
And while we're talking about this, your tone of voice. You have a really sweet, nice voice. And do you have to keep that? I mean, because emotion isn't going to work for them either, or it's going to.
Well, one thing, anytime a child has ADHD, it's extremely likely that they have another condition on top of it.
Okay.
Anxiety is one of the keys. Most of these kids will have issues with anxiety. So a calming presence is really important.
Okay.
And another thing, just note from the parent end, school is really a rough experience for these kids. School is against them in a lot of ways. These kids have a hard time socially with their friends because of their outbursts. They have a hard time controlling their emotions. They interrupt their friends, which doesn't go over well.
Mhm.
And so they get a lot of criticism from their friends. They get criticism from their teachers, especially as they move on through the years. The teachers are either frustrated if they're a child that's impulsive, that acts out. The teacher will be understandably frustrated. But also with the case with my child, he had a very hard time turning in his assignments. He would lose his assignments all of the time. So he was classified as lazy. And they come home, they feel like they've been beaten up.
Mhm.
And so the wonderful thing about, especially in my situation as a private teacher, I absolutely can accommodate these kids and make this a happy environment for them where they can succeed. They know I love them. I will forgive whatever needs to be forgiven. And they'll forgive me too when I do, something that doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
We say, let's try again. Let's try something else. But yes, it does. You need to be calm. You need to be happy, smile a lot.
Mhm.
And most importantly, this kid needs to know that you truly, truly care about them.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. That's good to know.
all right. And so talking about motivation, we talked about the prize for completing activities, timed contests. They love timed contests. And it can be even this simple when you're trying to get them redirected to a piece. How fast can you find your hand position? And you start and whoo, and then can we try it again for a better time? Well, yes, we can try it again, And then sometimes I'll write the time on their music. And so next week we can see if we can beat the time.
Oh, do you have them get the book out themselves too? Or
No, I probably should, but I'm really trying to push my way through the lessons. So it's usually faster if I do it myself.
I'm stunned at how long, if I ask someone to go get a book from their bag, how long it takes for them to find it in their bag and put it on the piano. So I say to my parents more often than not, get out their books, open all the books up to the right place and have it ready to go, because
That's a good idea.
That's that executive functioning, right?
Right.
And I know that we all can suffer from that.
Right.
So this is kind of something for all of us in some ways. But the whole gamification just really adds a lot of fun to any lesson, really. But it's really important with these types of students then.
Right. Because
Okay.
you'll notice, because the common misunderstanding, especially since it's called attention deficit disorder, is that these kids cannot focus. That is not true. If you hand this child a video game, 4 hours later, they will not have moved. They will still be on that game.
Yeah.
They can focus, but it's the reason they can focus on that computer game is because, well, first of all, the light is flashing, so that's stimulating their brain.
Mhm.
But there's that constant external stimulation, that the reward system. They're moving up a level.
Right.
You know,
Right.
So, moving up the level. Most of the method books have got the little certificate in the back. Take time to fill that out to make a big deal. Yay! You passed a level. You've moved up. That's one reason why the materials, the work section, one of my favorite apps is Piano Maestro, is because they're moving up levels constantly. They give them a new fun name, and they work from 1 star up to 3 stars. Things like that. And the apps are great, and I've listed a few of them on here that I find exceptionally helpful. I did put a couple of things to be careful of. Technology does have, especially for kids with ADHD, they will get distracted very easily. So like on the off bench time, and you have them working on an app, they could be very easily doing something else that you don't want them doing. And so the way I get around that is they need to come and show me your score. Come show me your score. And then I can praise them. I can give them some additional, hey, you improved on that round. That's great. I can give them some additional motivation so that they continue to want to show me their score.
Okay.
But I can keep track of what they're doing.
Right.
Also, like with Piano Maestro, a couple things to keep these kids, because when they're looking at things and that executive function is slow and they can get distracted so easily, things take them a little bit longer. So you have to be really careful that it's not going too fast. I love the fact that Maestro has got the hold on function and that you can slow down the tempo. You've got to be very careful. These kids do get frustrated very, very easily. So you have to be very sensitive to that. And then the other thing is the rising sun that comes up in the back. For some kids, that's just too much.
And I think there's an option now to turn it off, I think.
Oh, is there?
There is.
Oh,
yes.
That's good to know.
Yes. I'll show you that. I do remember hearing that from the developers had requests for that. So I do believe there's an option to turn that off.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that was my own. I'm like, the sun has got to go.
Yeah. So while we're talking about distractions, can you give us some tips? Because it happens more often than not where we get them focused, but then we have to change tasks. And that's the scary time, that transition. So do you have some tips so that we can really help ourselves through that process?
Well, a couple things. One is really limit your explanations. Don't talk. They're not going to hear a word you say. They're just not.
And I really do think that's a challenge for all of us. I am even thinking you could join with me. What if we did a whole week without talking at a lesson?
Yes. They would appreciate it.
Yeah.
The talking is more for our benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying what? If you're not
really limit conversation, limit things that are going to cause them to fade.
Okay.
Also, when you were talking about how you're organizing things, what I do right from the get-go is I get them going on an activity right away. It's right there. And while they're doing it, then I organize their books. Okay. I have them in order on the piano. The flag is right there so that I can do it really quickly. Having a couple of tangible things is really a good thing too. They will learn much better with hands-on manipulatives. Trying to think of things abstractly in their heads doesn't work really well. So, for example, a math teacher is going to use an abacus or, tokens or things to move around. We need to use similar things. I know you have fabulous ideas. A lot of your teaching that you use that are hands-on. Those are great ways, and that'll keep them engaged too.
So many of the things that you're talking about just work across the board, but these are really important.
Right. And that's the thing is with a kid with ADHD is really just developmentally delayed. And most kids are never going to hit full proficiency of a normal person, but you'll see that their behavior is normal for somebody 4 or 5 years younger.
Okay.
And so when you're thinking of that hands-on, we need to be off the bench moving like you would for a preschool student, you're still going to need to be doing a lot of that with your 10 and 11-year-olds.
So sorry to interrupt you because I know you got a flow going, but it brings to mind, okay, so when you are having fun doing something off the bench, then I've had the experience where they just get too wild. And then how do you reel them back in? Because I can unintentionally, bring them way out of bounds. How do you bring them back in? Do you have some tricks for that?
Well, part of it is keeping calm yourself, or when it does get off, is say, hey,
okay,
let's move to the next activity. We need to get your reading cards in so we can get your prize today.
Okay. So, and that's concrete. That's their reminder continually. Because I've done it before where I've just looked straight in their eyes and talked to them that way too. And do you think that is beneficial or
As long as it's positive.
Okay. Yes.
Because again, if a child feels like they're being successful in piano, they will continue and they will love it and they will put a lot of effort in. As soon as they feel like they can't succeed and this is like school again, they'll, their motivation will be completely gone. No matter what rewards you're offering them, it just won't be fun anymore.
So let's just, for the sake of people listening, let's frame something in a positive way, because you hear a lot of negatives, like, okay, sorry, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. You're going to have to sit out. So how could we frame it in a more positive way?
Well, for example, there was one week a few weeks ago where Jack did not earn his prize. It was one of those days. It was one of those days. And I understood. And so, I listened to him talk more. I said, you're having a hard day, are you? Yes, I'm having a hard day. I said, I understand. We'll do the best we can today. But at the end of the lesson, he asked about his prize. And I said, I'm really sorry. I know you had a rough day, so we can't get the prize today, but I know you can get it next week. We'll try again.
Okay. So it's just that try again.
As opposed to, look, this is your fault.
Right.
You didn't do what you're supposed to. No prize.
And I think it's so easy to throw a negative in their court, right? And we have to just be thinking about the future and what's going to happen in the future and how good they can be in the future.
Right.
And we're looking forward to seeing it next week.
And it's really important. And this really helped me as a parent, because watching my child go through this, and especially some of the negative things he went through with his teachers. And I knew he can't help it. He wants to. My child was a real pleaser, and so when the teachers got upset with him, it just tore at his little soul. But he honestly, he would try so hard to remember to bring his homework to school. He tried so hard, and he would leave it on the stairs. And they can't help it. They really want to please you. They really want to play the piano. The piano's cool. That it's really fun. They want to learn how to do this. They just need to feel like they can.
Right. And I think that's an important thing for us as teachers to think about, is that these are human beings that really want to be here, and that they've got a few issues, and we have to be okay with that.
Right.
And
to think about it kind of in a longer term, the thing that I found, there's those first couple of years, I call them the incubation period. It's that way with all students, where you're nurturing and things are just slowly coming together. And when they do, the kid takes off. It's true with these kids as well. You just need that incubation period at the beginning. You keep it positive. You don't worry so much about how fast they're going through the book. It's their pace. This is their lesson. But as long as you can keep it positive and they're feeling that they're succeeding, they're moving forward, you'll get past that incubation period, and then they'll start taking off.
And I think that's an important point to think about too, is that, when they didn't practice, okay, just assign the same thing. I will not do that. I will always say, let's add this week, so that there is momentum, because sometimes practice isn't going to happen, or something, things happen.
Right.
But keep it positive, keep it so that it feels like it's moving forward, because otherwise they're just spinning their wheels. And I'm talking across the board, right? It doesn't even have to be kids with ADHD. It can just be anyone.
Right.
But I think that's important, is to be continuing moving forward.
Right. And one of the things that I've found that helps so much with this, one of my greatest finds, these piano safari books. There's the pianosafari.com website where you can get these. These books are phenomenal for kids with ADHD. They've got the full method book. I haven't used that yet. But
it's very popular. A lot of people love it.
I have pulled in both the animal adventures and the pattern pieces to supplement with my kids. Well, I've been using it with all of them now,
Okay.
but it's been particularly helpful with my kids with ADHD. These pattern pieces are great. You can teach them by rote, and then supplement with, because I've been using them, one of my personal favorites is this I Love Coffee. This is by the Shocks. And the reason why it is so great for kids with ADD is because it's got the little tiny, it's divided into parts. And so there are 6 parts of the song. They're both small parts. The kid learns one part at a time. And I do one part at a time. They get the part down. We add another part. And so they're always feeling like they're moving ahead. And at the end, they have this big, long piece that with the duet part, it sounds so much fun. I mean, people at recitals always love to hear it. So it's fun to play. And my Jack is even, he's come up with a lot of different improvisations of it, which are fun. And it works really well within the set. But all of these pieces are great. They're motivational. They're fun to play. They're easy to learn. They have the online reminder videos. So if they forget at home, which with the lower executive function, that is important to have lots of reminders. And you were saying about new things, that we do have to balance with these kids because they do need a lot of repetition. And so that's why the pattern pieces, and I do have several others that have worked really, really well. We stay with the pattern pieces for a while because they're still interested in playing them. They're fun, but they can play them. And it's a fun musical experience. Richard Chronister was talking, one of his favorite, or his most famous quotes was, a musical experience every lesson. You've got to make sure that these kids are actually playing the piano. Learning to read is going to be hard, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But breaking things down and making sure that they've got something that's fun to play is really important.
And it's tactile, right? It's kinesthetic. It's feeling it, right?
And it's a reward all by itself. So the motivation is right there because they have something and they can play for their family and friends, and that's fun.
And while we're on this note, I think that's when I was looking through this the very first time, what struck me is you said teach reading away from repertoire. Like, oh, yeah. And I somewhat do that myself already, but I liked how you framed that. So what you mean by that is?
Yeah, so, back when we were talking about breaking things into manageable chunks or one thing at a time, if you can teach reading independently, teach repertoire independently, teach technique independently, and then, of course, you're going to bring them all in together. But these kids if they can learn to focus on one thing at a time, they will be much more successful. You have to remember when they're playing the piano, their brain is going in a lot of different places, and anything causes them to lose their, and they'll get distracted by anything. I remember when Connor first took his first ADD pills, and he said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, this is the first time I've ever been able to hold one thought at a time."
Wow.
And unfortunately, he wasn't diagnosed until high school, which is one reason I've got a lot of practical experience, the trial and error, is because I didn't know what I was dealing with.
Interesting for him to be able to tell you that.
Yes. And so, by the time we get these kids, usually their medications have worn off quite a bit. And so, and they've used so much of their focus power at school. And so, one thing at a time works really, really well.
So let's just be clear then. So the pieces that you find in Piano Safari, you would teach them by rote. Would they even take those books home?
They do, yes.
Okay.
I have them just for copyright.
Okay.
I have them buy a copy of the book. Because I think that's fair to the people who are
correct. But would they even look at it, do you think, during the week?
Yeah, they probably won't.
Okay.
But what I do, is I'll teach you. I wanted to show the animal adventures because this book it does such a great job of breaking things up.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, it starts with the lion paw, and this is largely here for the teacher. The kids don't use it quite as much as, the teacher and the parent. This helps the parent stay on track too. But lion paw is talking about arm weight. And so this is just a fun way for them to explore the arm weight. And then there's this really fun piece, the King of the African Drum, which I teach entirely by rote. When they get if they're a little bit more advanced, I will put the music up there. And sometimes I put the music up there for me, so I remember the words.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But and then it goes a little bit further and allows the kids to improvise and use what they've learned. And so there's another wonderful thing I love about this is how it teaches form, because there's a roaring lion part, there's a crouching lion part, and then there's a your lion part. And then you can get actually cards from off of their website where the kids can put them in any order. But they learn about form, which is really important for these kids to be able to find patterns. They can find patterns in their music and the overall form. They will learn a lot better. That helps them keep them focused, but it also keeps things manageable. As they're realizing they're not looking at this whole big piece. They're only looking at this chunk, and then this chunk, and then this chunk.
The overwhelm doesn't set in.
Right.
Okay. Nice. Good. Well, I've been interested in using Piano Safari, and it's more because I have not done so just because. Then I've been really looking forward to it, but now you've just talked me into why I need to do it sooner rather than later.
And let me show you one other thing, because as we're talking about avoiding distractions and music that works well, even as they're coming to read these pieces, look at the things. It's very clean. The music is very bold and big. There's a cute little picture, but you notice that the print is a lot softer. The focus is of the piece. So one tip that Connor has given me to find out if a piece works well as far as reading is for those of us, who need glasses, you take off your glasses and you look and see what is it that you can actually see on the music. If it's the piece, you're going to be okay. If you can't figure out where the piece is, neither is this child.
Very good point. Yes. Well, thank you for sharing those. It looks wonderful. Let's see. What else? Are there other pieces or repertoire that you want to cover? I like your list of pattern pieces. I think that's so important. I love pattern pieces for anybody.
Yes.
But yeah, I like your list. That's very helpful. Is there anything else we want to cover with repertoire before we move on?
There's the one other that works exceptionally well. Diane Heidi has put out these attention grabbers. And again, she's very careful about making sure that there's no extra stuff in the music. It's very, very clean. And so these work well.
And her website is packed full of tips for dealing and teaching students with extraordinary. I don't really want to label them. I know you're now used to it, but it's unfortunate for their sake because we all have issues, right?
Right. But the advantage of having a label is you know exactly what you're dealing with.
That's true.
And so back to those 3 points. If you can help them with their organization, with their motivation, and breaking tasks into one thing at a time, you know that they can be successful. And that's the only reason why I would ever use a label. But you will find as a teacher, a lot of parents are really hesitant about labeling their kids. And you will get a child and you'll be pretty certain that they fall on the spectrum.
Yeah.
We're not doctors. We don't get to diagnose. But as teachers, we can use these same strategies with these children. And you'll
without even having to inform the parents.
Right. And it is important to keep communication open with parents, but,
Well, let's just go to the parents just for a second here.
Sure.
I loved your comment here that if you have a student with ADHD, most likely one of the parents has it as well, which is interesting because then there's a trickle effect, right?
Because, when you're relying on the parents to help organize everything for their practice or to arrive to the lesson on time and to keep these things consistent, they're going to have the same issues that their child is having.
That really kind of just made a lot of connections for me.
And two, I would really advocate being kind to these parents as well. They're going to be the ones that forget to pay you. It's not intentional. So don't feel bad about reminding them. They want to be reminded, but they're not out to get you. They just really don't remember.
All good tips. Yeah. There's one other thing that I thought of, but I can't think of it right now. So if I do think of it, I will ask you. Oh, I've had parents question, they'll be concerned because students are playing something, but they're not really reading it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say, you need to trust me. And I don't know how better else to explain it to them, that it's a process. And I love that word incubation. I'm going to steal that one from you because it is an incubation process. And you're right, all of those things gel at some point. But I think that's an important thing to establish with your parents immediately then, is let them know that there's a plan behind all of this.
Right, because a lot of this, I know when I was taking lessons as a kid, the philosophy was a lot different. And so that's what the parents, they come in with a different expectation. Right. But if you can communicate, you know, really what you're doing and how it comes together. And studio recitals are great because they can see your advanced kids and see, oh yes, you really do know what you're doing. You know.
Yes. Good. All right. Let's go through your basic teaching strategies. Have we gotten through some of them? We have talked about. Anything you want to focus in particular?
Let's see. Really, a lot of repetition and a lot of variety. You know, for most of my students, when they go through, you know, they're playing through one of their pieces from their method books, I just have them play it once. It's, you know, but for my ADHD kids, they play it twice. And that's for their checklist. They need to do it twice.
They'll play it twice for you in the lesson before you pass it off. And does it have to be absolutely perfect?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
So you have kind of
although they will, pacing. Let's talk about pacing.
Okay.
Because that's really important. Yeah. All of these books are going to go too fast. They're all going to go too fast. And so I do stay on pieces for more than 1 week with them. But at the same time, we do try and add something new in each time as well. The reading cards are great, but you got to do a lot of things. So for teaching reading, I usually have them working out of 2 method books at a time. They're doing the reading cards jacks up to 6. I started with about 3 because that was hard for me.
Okay.
A sight reading book, and apps. The Note Rush is my favorite app. And you'll notice, you know, they've got the different themes, which are really fun. The themes don't work.
Okay.
I give them a choice. Sometimes they think it's fun to try. I don't want them to feel like they're being limited because they have a disability. But they'll try it, and every time they're like, yeah, this other one's easier. Yeah, it is. So.
Well, when you see the soccer ball on the staff, it's a little bit hard to see, is that a line or a space? Because I would say that myself too. I do like the themes, but I can see where that could be distracting and hard for them to recognize.
But what's great about that, especially if you turn your iPad on the side, which I think it actually requires, it's big. And it takes up the whole thing. If you're on the plain one, it's easy to see. They play it, they can hear it, and that gives them an instant ding when they've got it right. And that they didn't get it right, they can keep trying until they get it.
Okay, good.
And I do offer, you know, because there's the 5 levels, and every time they pass a level, they get a prize.
Okay. Well, shall we just talk about prizes a minute?
Prizes are great.
Where do you get prizes that students like? What, you know, or what do you get? What's in your stash?
Yeah, you know, I do some different things for different times of year. The basic standard is Costco candy. I know it's probably not the best thing, but it works and it's cheap. But during the summer, when we're working on some specific things, then I do a little bit more and go to the dollar store and get some things and I splurge a little bit more. Okay. But those they have to work a little harder for. And I did find it. I should have brought my new prize. They're little finger flashlights. Oh, yeah, they hook on your finger and they're different colors.
Okay, we're gonna have to find those at the dollar store.
No, those are on Amazon.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, and
we'll put a link in those. That sounds like fun.
Yes.
Could you do anything on the piano with them?
I just got them.
Okay.
So.
Ooh, I'm excited. But thank you. Now, okay, can we just talk about sugar then? Because I just had an experience, not personally, but someone else had an experience where a child came in on 3 Oreos and the lesson was a mess.
Yes, and I'm wondering if the Oreos really were the problem.
Okay.
Because most of the research studies show that there isn't a link between sugar and ADHD.
Interesting.
And in fact, with the if you watch the podcast that I recommend there at the bottom, he actually suggests that the child use sugar when they need to focus because the increased blood sugar will help
the
them
energy.
focus.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, well that is good to know. So can we then go into what triggers some of their issues?
Anytime that there's been a change of medication is a very common one. I had a rough summer with my ADHD boys because their insurance company stopped covering the medication that worked for them, and they had to be on an alternate one. It was really rough. Those kids were trying so hard, and it wasn't their fault, but that medication was just not working. Lack of exercise. These children need exercise every day. I love it when I'm really flexible with their sports schedules because when they come after sports, they are really focused.
Because I do remember you saying that allow them the luxury of changing things around, which I know we don't like to do, but if they need some kind of change in a schedule because they can go to a sporting event, you say yes as much as possible.
It is in your best interest.
Well, that's good to know.
Because honestly, the physical activity can be as effective as medication. They can't. Most kids, it's beyond a certain severity, can't use it instead of, but if used in addition to.
So have you tried jumping jacks? Like I've got a big exercise ball that I'll have kids bounce on to feel a steady beat. I love them to play drums, to feel anything like that. During a lesson would probably be good for them as well.
Yes, especially if they're just, or in my kid's case.
Yeah, right.
And also, I had teachers at my kid's school that were trying to get him to sit still. He would sit still because they would threaten to take away his recess if he didn't sit still. He would, but he was absolutely crazy by the end of the day. And he wasn't able to learn anything because he took all of his focus to sit still. And so you have to ask yourself as a teacher, do you want them to focus on sitting still or do you want them to focus on learning the piano?
So if they have the wiggles at the piano, we just kind of let them do that. I think what's frustrating for teachers, if I'm going to be, honest, is there's all those black and white things right there. So they always want to play them, right? And fiddle with them. So what do you do?
So, if they're playing when they're not supposed to, you just close the lid of the piano.
Okay.
If there's something that's distracting, you make it go away.
Okay.
Back for the avoiding distractions is if you can keep things as clean and clear and out of their sight and out of their sound and out of as much as you can avoid distractions, the more they can focus on what you want them to focus on.
So not too many toys, but just enough when you need
a concrete example. And you can have the toys, but the secret is put it behind the camera.
Put it away because I've noticed that too. If I have something,
that's all they see. That's all they see. But anything you've got, or if you've got a stack of music, I'm a stacker. I'm a horrible stacker. Put it behind the child. Okay. If there's blinds, you've got these beautiful windows right here, close them.
Yeah, because I got bunny rabbits out there.
And Connor's always got this joke, squirrel.
So let's just go back to just a minute now to the triggers, because I think that's what we need to be ready for. Is when they walk in the door, we don't know who we're going to get. Right. Correct?
Right.
And it's, regardless of what triggers it, we need to have some tools in our back pocket.
Right.
So I think you've given those to us, but is there anything else? Basically that checklist is going to be priceless. That's your ammunition for the day, really, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other tips that you can give us?
And if you can have a little bit of a heads up, I always know when the kids are about to start school that it's going to be a rough 2 weeks.
Okay.
They're anxious. Starting school again, there's a lot of anxiety, so they don't sleep. And if a kid with ADD does not sleep, even any person where they don't sleep, they're going to get distracted really easily, right?
Right.
So if a child with ADHD is not sleeping well, their symptoms become very unmanageable.
Okay. So let's talk about that then, because you know that sometimes a student simply cannot focus that day. So what do you do within your lesson time then with them? How do you feel good about it? Yeah.
Well, the child will dictate because you'll see the child. There's the chatty kid who they just need to talk, and every time you try and redirect them, finally they'll start getting frustrated with you. And then what they're telling you is, I need to talk to you.
Okay.
And as a piano teacher, you get to know the kid really well. The kid hopefully becomes really comfortable with you, and they feel like they can talk to you. And sometimes you just need to allow that. And so you let them talk for a minute. And then you can try and see if you can, and then they just still. Okay. Talk some more. And then you try again. And, or there'll be the kid who just really likes to improvise.
Okay, that's where I was going to go next, because they tend to be ultra creative. So maybe that's how.
And my theory with that is because they're holding all of these different thoughts at the same time. That's what creativity is, right? Is being able to put things together in new ways. Well, their brain's doing it automatically. Although I will tell you that medication does suppress that. But since this tends to be wearing off by the time you get them, they can be extremely creative. And so that's where you can feel like you're giving them a truly musical experience. If you can see that they still have some left, but they're fading, you can say, hey, cut you a deal. If you can just make it through this and this, then I'll let you choose what we're going to do.
Nice.
We can improvise. We can play with the apps. There's you'll be able to learn with the kid. What is it that they gravitate towards? What is it they really enjoy doing? And that's you can include that as part of the motivation too. If you'd like to do that instead of candy, that may work as well. Or in addition to, I would say in addition to, the more motivation, the better.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that music you lend them has a high chance of being either damaged or lost. And I don't know about you, but regardless of what type of student walks in the door, literally a child walked in and the dog had bit off the whole corner. There's teeth marks and everything. So it does happen. The dogs do eat piano books. So yeah.
I have bite marks, but it was actually little sister.
Oh,
mine. She was teething.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it happens. Well, anything else that we did not cover? This has been fantastic, and I know we kind of jumped around, but I like how you've organized this all for us. It's just so helpful. I think overall, the little card that you made, which I'm really admiring that, so that you sit down and make that before the student comes. You do that for all your students. All my students?
No, just the ADD ones.
Just the ADD, okay.
And actually, and I'll tell you, this is I told you they're brothers both, I have two brothers that come together that both have severe ADHD, especially the younger one is more severe than the older. The younger one needs the card. The older one doesn't. Okay. And it's actually, he feels a little bit more mature that he's not using the card.
He's past the card.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And, but he has the same expectations. And even though if I had him by himself, I would not offer him candy. I don't think he needs it.
Okay.
But I never want to put a child in a position where they feel they need to act out in order to get your attention. And so he gets the prize just like his brother, because he's doing exactly what I'm asking to.
Need to act out to get your attention. That's an interesting concept too, because that's probably what they do a lot, right? When
Well,
they're
you
not
know,
getting attention.
well, especially, you know, if you've got siblings and brothers in particular, they're competitive. If you're giving one extra attention, the other one is going to notice the the behaviors that the other one is doing in order to get that attention, and they're going to start imitating it.
So in this case, I bet both of those together, that's an interesting hour for you. Do either of them have tendencies to blurt out? And if
Mhm.
so, how do you
Mhm.
manage blurting?
Just a kind reminder of, hey, right now it's Jack's turn. And of course, I do allow some of it because, like I said, anytime that they do one of their off-bench activities, whether
Right.
it's a worksheet or an app, they come and
When
show
you're
me. So,
finished. Yeah.
so there is definitely some blurting that's allowed,
And that's,
but the
You're used to
blurting
it,
that's
right?
not allowed is, "Hey, you didn't sound good all that." So,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, get back to your app. You know, right now it's your brother's turn. It'll be your turn in just a few
Mhm.
minutes.
So the trick is to reprimand them in a way that reminds them of something good that's coming
Right,
in the future
right,
as much as possible.
right. And we'll just, and it's just a gentle reminder,
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
right now it's your brother's turn.
One other question. It sounds like you teach a lot of ADHD children. So do parents seek you out because
You
of
know, I don't know that anyone's done it intentionally,
that? Oh, okay.
but they come from my interview, and I think the kids can sense the fact that I'm going to work with them.
Okay.
And I've always had more boys than girls in my
Mhm.
studio. Always, I'm seeing a trend. Girls, and I should say, girls are affected by ADHD as well.
Mhm.
It's just the boys have it. It's more prevalent in boys,
Mhm.
and so that's where my experience is with boys.
Well, I enjoy them, and of course I'm partial because I've got 3 sons. But what's interesting is I think you could set yourself apart in some ways too. So if those of you who are looking for a way to find new students, you know, parents are looking for people for their children to love on them, right?
That's true. Although I will issue a little caution.
Okay.
That children with ADHD will take a lot more of your energy.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I never want to have more than a few.
Okay.
And that is so I can give them the attention that they need and they deserve,
Mhm.
and I'm not exhausted. But if you know, because you know, like you see, I do go do some extra effort for these kids,
Right. Right.
and just the managing, especially during those first couple of years as you're going through that incubation period and trying to set up, it's exhausting.
Okay.
It's really exhausting. It's rewarding and it's great, but that's one reason why I haven't like marketed myself
Mhm.
as a specialist.
No, that's
in
a good point.
ADHD,
That's good.
because if I had 20 of these children, it would be challenging.
And do you teach in groups at all? And are they involved in a group situation?
Yeah, currently, no.
Okay.
You know, the partners that I do is the most
Okay.
I do for groups.
Okay. So you
Is
can't
the
really speak on that.
groups are really, I have in the past, it really is a challenge because being because they can be distracting of the other kids,
Mhm.
and that's when you have to control their behavior a little bit more. Whereas in a private setting, as long as they're safe and I'm safe, we're good.
Well, in some ways, don't you think the kids need to have an experience that's different than school? So maybe that private setting is the most ideal for them.
I really think it is. It was like I told you that my first experience was teaching with the piano prep program with that child, and we did keep him there for a couple of years, but he fell so far behind the other kid. And granted, he has dyslexia and some other issues
Mhm.
as well, but it got to be really discouraging to him because he wasn't keeping up with the other kids, and the other kids, especially as he was getting older, weren't being as kind to him
Mhm.
because they wanted to be there to learn, and he was distracting from that.
But on that same note, they can also keep up just fine, some of them, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
It's not an intelligence
it's
issue.
not, no.
It's just the best analogy that I've thought through. I have a niece who was diagnosed with, oh god, no, my brain's not working. I mean, epilepsy, where she had
Okay.
seizures, And they weren't aware of the fact that that was happening. They were just little mini things where she would check out. And that's why she was getting behind in school, and they couldn't figure out because she was a gifted child. But the way that the doctor explained it is just because she's been missing most of school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way it is for ADHD, is because their attention is being pulled in so many different directions. They're not getting the full instruction that you're giving them at a time, which is why it takes longer. It's not that they're less intelligent, they have less capacity to learn. But my Connor is extremely gifted. He did learn how to read when he was 18 months old, which is really unusual, but he really wanted to, you know. So it's not an intelligence issue. It's just, it usually takes them more time because they haven't, their attention has been pulled, and so they haven't got your full instructions. So they need to hear it a few times to get the full picture.
It's like watching a movie but missing every other scene.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this has been so helpful, and I'm so thankful that you joined me here, because I wanted to learn more, and I know there's other people out there that would love to know more, so that, number one, I mean, don't you want to be the best teacher you can be? And so you've got this child on the bench, and really, we don't want to deny anyone from making music. So you've got to have tools in your back pocket. So let's go through the 3 tools. I was just going through them in my head just to make sure I remember. So we're talking about brains right here. We've got motivation. Yes. Or no. The very first one was the organization. Organization, which I get that one. And that was really fascinating that they really don't have an intrinsic motivation. Is that what you're calling it? So it needs to be external motivation, extrinsic motivation, just outside things that will motivate them. And then the last one is bite-sized, small chunks. And I really like the idea of separating everything. Reading is not part of technique. Reading is not part of repertoire, but eventually they incubate and they come together. Yes. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Pam. And I hope you all find this helpful. And we will have Pam's wonderful handout there, and probably some links of some fun things that we thought of as we were discussing things. All right, take care. Thank you very much.